It's Friday, April 16th. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel with an almost live report from sunny, hot, flat, and crowded Lakeland, Florida. Sun and Fun 2021. What a great turnout here at Sun and Fun this year. Quick 737 MAX update. This has been out for a couple of days now, and not widely understood small grounding of some of the 737 MAX aircraft. But a recent article by Dominic of the Seattle Times. If there's one written press journalist out there that I would highly recommend subscribing to and following, and that would be Dominic of the Seattle Times, is one of the few people that has some access to the workings inside the Boeing Aircraft Corporation. And in a recent article, he was able to shed a little light of what's going on with the 737 MAX and this recent grounding. There was no airworthiness directive produced for this current grounding of the 737 aircraft. It's a very short grounding. They're going to get the aircraft fixed really quickly here. There was no emergency airworthiness directive associated with this either. It's a problem with a emergency power supply. It sounds like they're not saying exactly what component it is, but here's what Dominic says, and we can glean from this quite a bit of information. The problem, according to two people with knowledge of the modified manufacturing process, arose when a backup electrical power control unit, PCUs they're often called, was secured to a rack on the flight deck with fasteners in place of the rivets previously used. So you got a PCU that's mounted on a rack up in the cockpit, and normally these are riveted onto the rack. And I don't know if this is an issue with the original type certificate versus the actual manufacturing process, but instead of being riveted in, it sounds like this rack was bolted in. And as a result of it being bolted in instead of riveted, there's concerns about the electrical grounding of the component. Each electrical component needs to be grounded electrically to the airframe for the circuit to work correctly, and grounding problems can provide a whole host of electrical gremlins or problems to your electrical system. So this is a PCU that has been bolted in instead of riveted in, so what they got to do is replace the bolts with rivets and put it back to its original configuration. Again, this is highlighting a problem of the quality control process over there at Boeing. So it's only grounded a handful of aircraft, and they're going to get these fixed quickly and get them returned to service. The lack of secure electrical grounding could potentially cause malfunctions in a variety of electrical systems, such as the engine anti-ice system and the APU, or auxiliary power unit. And that's really the only emergency backup that I know of. Oh boy. They're just entering the pattern. Stand by one. The emergency backup power on the 737 is what? The battery and or the APU. So Boeing notified the FAA. It wasn't the other way around on this situation. And after Boeing informed the airlines late Thursday evening, Southwest grounded 30 of its MAXs, and American Airlines grounded 17 of their MAX aircraft, and United 16 of their MAX aircraft. 16 other customers worldwide were affected by this. Now, there was another issue previously unreported regarding the quality control issue with the electric stabilizer trim motors themselves. In a recent batch, let's go back again to the Seattle Times. In a recent batch of 20 to 40 of these electric motors, which drive the jack screw on the horizontal stab trim of the 737 MAX and are produced by Eaton Manufacturing in Ireland, this defective motor, it sounds like, was only to be found in about 7 MAX aircraft that have already been built, and those motors have been replaced. So there have been no problems with these electric motors on the 737 MAX. Remember, if you do have a problem with the electric trim motor itself on the 737, even on the MAX, you can still manually trim the aircraft. And I've had this happen before on a different airplane, an MD-80 or a DC-9, where the electric pitch trim failed. We were on approach coming into land, so we already had the aircraft pretty well configured for the approach and landing. And in the case of the DC-9, the alternate trim or suitcase switches also did not work. Learning from Alaska Airlines disaster regarding the trim system on the DC-9, we elected not to fiddle with it, followed the checklist, and in that case went ahead and landed with the trim set in its last setting, and it was just a little bit heavier on the elevator trim for the flare and landing, no big deal. But in the case of the 737, you can still manually trim the aircraft using the hand crank trim wheels if this system fails. It is all associated to the MCAS system, but again, if the motor itself fails, the MCAS system can't work. Now, there was an incident here recently on March 29th of an American Airlines flight from Miami to Santo Domingo returned to Miami with a pitched trim problem. The pitch trim quit working. In that case, it was found not to be the motor, it was found to be the relay that turns the pitch trim motor on and off had failed. And again, that crew was able to run the correct checklist and was able to simply manually trim the aircraft and return to Miami and land uneventfully. So that's your 737 MAX update. More teething problems on quality control over at Boeing Aircraft as they get these aircraft returned to service. Thanks for your support. We'll see you here. I gotta go look at some airplanes. I'll show you a few here at the end.